Cries of Redemption discusses sensitive topics, including sexual abuse, trauma, and mental health struggles. Listener discretion is advised. If you find any topics disturbing, please prioritize your well-being and step away if needed. While this podcast is rooted in faith and biblical truth, I understand that healing looks different for everyone. Whether you share my faith or not, you are welcome here. My goal is to uplift and support you on your journey. This podcast is meant to offer encouragement and support, but it is not a replacement for personal counseling or therapy. If you are struggling, I encourage you to seek help from a licensed mental health professional.
So, my name is Kit. My name Kit is a chosen name that I chose for myself after beginning my healing journey. It helped me to really process the parts of my healing that were really difficult for me to face. I felt as if my previous identity was just so wounded and hurt from the abuse that I had faced in multiple areas of my life, throughout my life. And it was a way for me to really claim my own identity and not to be stuck in the space and the mindset that Jessica was stuck in. It was a very important part of my healing journey to take on this new name and to let that other side of me rest, because she was tired from dealing with all of the trauma and pain that she had faced. And with that new identity, I was able to build a new life for myself as a massage therapist and an artist. Both of those careers are chosen out of a passion, out of a voice that wants to be heard, a way for me to process my own healing, my own pain, and my own trauma, and to take that into a new space where I feel like life is worth living. Before, it was really hard to face every day, not sure exactly where to turn or what to look to for that support. As I chose the path into massage therapy and began my own physical healing journey as well, it helped me look at my body in a new way, and it helped me to see it with love and to find ways to nurture it, where before I would disregard it as worthy of being seen or loved, and I really saw myself as less than. And with massage therapy, it guided me into a way of physical healing and energetic healing, to a place where I can then offer that support and healing towards others. And that is my passion here on earth this time around, is to take that pain and that hurt and that trauma and help people transform that into something, into healing, so they can move forward with their lives and create the lives that they deserve. And I also do that in my art as well. I feel like art gives us a chance to express and feel and to experience the emotions that we kind of have hidden and that are difficult to experience in everyday life. It gives us an outlet and a path to that experience. And in doing so, we're able to process experiences and emotions a little bit easier. I've been blessed enough to be able to teach some classes with age ranging from 5 to adult, however you'd like to classify that last age limit. And even though it's only been about 1.5 years since I've been doing my art in my art classes, I've had multiple students come to me and tell me that my unique approach to art classes and art education has really helped them to see their own intuition and their own ability that's within themselves, as everybody has their own innate ability to express and to really experience a depth of emotion. We just don't always have the tools. And that's my main goal with art therapy, is to guide people to the tools to experience those situations and emotions a little bit easier. So that's a little bit about me. A therapist and a healer, just doing my best to heal through my own past so I can guide others into healing as well. Yeah, so when I look back on my childhood, the biggest word that kind of comes to mind is lonely. Even though I was surrounded by a big family, I had multiple siblings and cousins. There was about 14 of us all together that all lived nearby. I struggled to feel seen or heard. Through the experiences that I had in early childhood, I ended up building a shell around myself so I could feel protected. And because of that shell, I became silent and I retreated into myself. It felt like no one was really able to break through that shell in order to actually see me and who I was. I had a coping mechanism of disassociation, which I still struggle with today, that greatly affected my memories and still does. And because of that, I would tend to live in a fantasy world or in my projected future. It was always difficult for me to live in the present moment, to feel safe in the present moment. Some good memories that I have from early childhood would be when I was alone in nature. We lived in New Mexico in my early childhood, and the solace of the stillness of the desert was always very calming. There was such an expansiveness to it that felt as if it kind of had the eternal life energy to it, where it was always happening, but also was so quiet. And a lot of people think of the desert, they think of death or sand or just nothing. In some ways it is, but there were pockets of that where it just felt very calming and quiet and safe in that as well. When I moved to North Carolina around second grade, it was a big difference from the desert to the East Coast, where it was green everywhere. I'd never seen as much green as I had when I moved here. That made it a little more difficult to find that solace and the stillness of nature. But as I grew in the area and grew up here, I began to find comfort in the green, in the lush, in the fullness that the East Coast has to offer here. Some of the more difficult memories mostly focused around an overall feeling of walking on eggshells, of you better be quiet, you better sit down, you better behave, or else who knows what's going to happen. I did have a overly religious aunt who tried to force that religion down the throats of everybody that she came across. And though I do have a pretty healthy relationship with God and deity now in my older age, it was hard to work through that because of her aggression towards trying to force everybody to have her same beliefs and the way she approached it. She was somebody who was in my childhood for a good portion of it, more than my own grandfather. He was a truck driver, so he would come and go. But she was one of the people who was there more consistently, and that was kind of some of my worst memories, is just being around her and experience the way that she kind of belittled our family because we weren't as religious as her family. I moved to New Mexico from California, where I was born, really early on, between the ages of 1 and 2. And I experienced my early childhood from maybe 2 to 7 in New Mexico. That's where most of my mom's family was located. We moved to North Carolina after my mom remarried, around the age of 7. And so it was a very short period of time between the ages of 2 and 7 that this abuse was happening, very young. And I don't know exactly when it started or when it ended or if it really ended, because we did visit New Mexico periodically almost every summer. We would return back home and visit. But let's see, between the ages of 2 and 7, I'd say, is when that sexual abuse really began or really started happening. My maternal grandfather was a truck driver. And when he would come home from his long hauls, I know everybody, the whole house, the whole family would just be nervous and walking on eggshells when he was coming home. Because of that, the disassociation I had, it took me a long time into my healing journey to really be able to process and accept what was and what did happen to me in my early childhood. But the abuse began around 2 to 7, and my relationship with that person has never really been good. I don't think that I ever really felt like I had a grandfather, at least on that side of the family, because he was gone a lot, and then when he came home, it wasn't good. But I know that after it began, there was a lot of fear towards him and men in general. And I think I still harbor some of that background, just fear towards men in general. Even today, I often talk to my sister about it, and we both agree that looking back, we don't think that we've ever had any real positive male influences in our life. Men in our lives have always either been abusive or neglectful or just, I'm not going to say deadbeats, but just not really taking on the responsibilities they should or that are there. And unfortunately, it's kind of distorted my view on men in general. And it's hard for me to find safety or security in men. And I feel like I'm always on my toes when it comes to being around a man in general. I'm always listening to what they're saying and checking it in my mind to see if maybe it lines up with a lie or something like that. And it's overwhelming to feel that way. I don't think that anyone else knew in the early years, but there were always hints and signs that even myself as a young child could kind of see that there was something wrong happening or something off happening. And in the later years, in the past years, many of my family members have come out and said that they also were sexually abused by my maternal grandfather as well. There's evidence of my grandmother being abused by him, my own mother, my own sister, and even some of my distant cousins were also affected by this man's abuse. So when it comes to what I was told to do or believe about what was happening, I was so young that the memories are a little difficult, but in some of my healing sessions, I've been able to remember either visual markers or the words that I hear in my head replaying. Sometimes I can trace back to that being things that my grandfather told me. I know one of the things that he would tell me is that it was my job, or I owed it to him, to be this place so he can relieve his own stress from the hard work that he did for the family. Even as a super young child between the ages of 2 and 7, he put that responsibility on me and others to be that for him. And I know that even today, I have a trigger that comes up and an avoidance of even being physically intimate with partners. And especially kissing on the mouth is something that really triggers me. And most of my partners learned that really early on, that kissing is something I almost avoid. It's an intimacy I've not been able to share with many partners, and it's extremely rare for me to do so. And through my healing sessions, I was able to retrace the kind of beginning of that trauma. And it originated with him forcing himself on me and his mouth on me. Again, repeating that idea that this is my job to be this thing for him, that I need to let him do what he's going to do and use my body to reduce his own stress or reduce his own whatever he may have been working through. That's some of the early things that I remember him saying. And because I was a little bit more of a rambunctious kid, I saw things and I would say things about what was happening, and he didn't want me to say things. He would be more aggressive towards me and with me, especially in those quiet, hidden moments, to the point where I even had to end up going to the hospital one time as a young child to have an emergency surgery because, they didn't have an answer for the reason why, but looking back on it, you can put the pieces together and realize it was sexual abuse. And that was definitely one of the times that he was more aggressive and penetrating me vaginally as a young 2 to 7-year-old child. I know there were also times when he would force his genitals into my mouth as well, and basically use whatever part of my body that he wanted to for his own gain, and convincing a child that that's their job, that's what they're supposed to do because of whatever reasoning he had at the time. That was mostly what he told me about what was happening. And, it was always to be kept quiet, always to be not talked about, and threatened to, if you do speak, then something will happen. And even today, I still struggle with that lack of being able to speak up in a lot of situations for fear of whatever may happen. It's something that I've really been working through, and this is part of that, to be able to speak on it, to be able to speak and know that he's so far away that there's no way he can affect my life. He's been out of my life for many, many years, and out of my family's life for years as well. It took a long time for my mother to be able to admit or understand or be able to really accept that's what he had done to her children and even to herself at a young age. She speaks on that often, where she doesn't want to go through therapy because she doesn't want to remember any of it. And I can understand that, because as those memories come up of yourself as a young child experiencing these things that are intense and that no one should ever have to face, it brings a sorrow, a sadness, and a pain of
Let's stop for a moment. Before I continue, I just want to check in. If anything I've said so far has stirred up difficult feelings, guilt, shame, confusion, please know you're not alone. I understand what it's like to believe something was your fault when it wasn't, to carry the weight of consequences you never deserved. It can take years to untangle those lies, and that's okay. If you need to pause, step away, or take a breath, please do. This space is for healing, not pressure. Come back when you're ready. I'll still be here.
Just a lack of even any kind of humanity, I feel like, coming from that person. And to see them still living and doing what they're living their life however they want to, it's hard to see that because it feels like it's unjust that they took away a lot of my life and a lot of what I could have experienced in life because of what they did early on. And a lot of times people will be like, oh, that happened so many years ago, but it affects every single day and it affects every single moment of your day. And people just don't really understand that. So the way that the abuse really affected how I saw myself was very negatively. I still struggle to see myself in a positive light today. I saw my body almost as a trash can, almost as something to throw away or to use and then toss like a handkerchief, which is basically what he did. He would, wouldn't show us any affection, wouldn't show us any kind of care, would just use us for what he wanted to use us for and then go back to whatever it is he was going to go back to. It's something I've struggled with my whole life. I can see where my mom also struggled with that self-image, that negative self-image. We've always had a little bit more weight on us. It's kind of like hereditary in our family. And with that, I think that he really targeted that in us to make us feel weak, to make us feel less than, to make us feel ugly, like no one would want us. So because no one would want us, then he could do what he wanted to do to us. Even today, through all the healing that I've done, it is still difficult for me to look at my body and say I'm beautiful. Even though I have done a lot of healing and I've lost quite a bit of weight and my body is stronger now than it has ever been. And I thank mostly the birth of my son for that, because when I had him, I realized that I needed to fight for my life. I needed to have the strength to chase him around and have the strength and courage to show him that life is worth living and not just fall into the trap of, wow, like my body isn't worth anything and no one's going to want me. Just finding that love and acceptance within myself so I can show that to him as well. I know that's something that my mom really struggled with and still does today. It's because I saw her struggle with that. It did seep into me as a child and young adult. That kind of worthlessness and the body is just not attractive enough to keep someone around, right? But even now, I still fight that. So it really did greatly change or affect the way I saw myself. Even though there was a part of me that was always there who said that you are worth loving and you are beautiful and you're so creative and imaginative, and the other voices I felt like were louder than my own. So they took precedence in my mind for many years. Even today, it's something I still face and fight. And if I have those negative thoughts, I've got to do the give myself 3 positive thoughts kind of thing. It greatly, impacted my ability to trust others. I think I mentioned earlier where my sister and I both agreed that I don't think that we've met a man in our lives that's been safe, that's been something that, or somewhere, or someone that we can trust, or even just feel safe around. As soon as I figure out, or as soon as I feel like there might be something, I tend to just completely drop everything. I am like fight or flight. I flight. I run away, which has probably taken me away from building some relationships that I could have built. Like at the first sign of danger or the first sign of, oh, this sounds familiar, or this feels familiar in a not good way, that I'm like, deuces. I just kind of zip out of there. And it has affected me to maybe experiencing some relationships that could have been something good or something healthy for me. And I have spent a lot of my time as an adult single. That's been good and bad at the same time. I find a peace within just being in my own energy and with myself. But there's also a deep loneliness of wishing and wanting there to be somebody there that I could trust and lean on. It's not just within myself. I also notice it a little bit in friendships where I don't really put myself fully out there with people for fear of them either rejecting me or fear of something negative happening, where it's just another addition to my list of abuse. For a long time, I would just rather just be alone than even face the possibility of another situation like that happening. So it has made me avoid a lot of connection in general. I'd feel ashamed because that voice in my head that told me that I shouldn't be doing this, or that I am worthy and that I do deserve better than this. But because of the other voice that was louder, it made me feel ashamed that I wasn't able to listen to my own voice. Even at that young age, there's not much you can fight against it. Even if you tell other people, they may not believe you. Even if you speak up, in my experience, then they get more aggressive and more physically aggressive towards you in general, and just make your life harder any way they can because they want to have that control over you. And angry is definitely something I've felt a lot of my life. I think it comes from that injustice where it's like, this shouldn't be happening and someone shouldn't be able to get away with something like this, and yet they are, over and over and over again, with multiple people over multiple generations. That anger also extends to family members that may have experienced it as well and not spoken up or not believed or not done something to protect the other children or the other people in the family that they could have. And the confusion definitely was a big part of it. As a young child, you want to experience love and you want to experience connection and intimacy with your family. That was never what any of that was. It wasn't connection or love or intimacy. And that confuses you as to what that really looks like. I don't feel like I had a really strong example of what those things look like from an early age. And without that strong example in my dating years, I also didn't really know what that looked like. And I don't think I experienced as much of a healthy connection, intimacy, or relationships as I could have if I would have had a stronger, healthy base of what that looked like. I know I did find myself in some toxic relationships and some abusive relationships because that felt more familiar to me than a healthy relationship did. And the numbness is definitely something I've struggled with that kind of goes along with disassociation, where you can't change what's happening. You can't really affect it. So the only thing you can do is turn yourself off, is close your eyes, la la la, plug your ears, not just try your best to not experience what's happening. And that turns to numbness at some point where you're not even able to feel the joy anymore because you've turned off everything, all the receptors, So you can't feel even the joy of life, which makes it really difficult to be present in the moment. That's something that I still struggle with to this day, is being present and experiencing the joy and the bliss that there is in life because of that pain and that numbness that came from the abuse and what I had to do as a 2 to 7-year-old child to avoid feeling that, to avoid really taking all that on. Definitely felt numb and confused and angry and ashamed. And some of my life, I feel like I even chose to be more invisible than I had to because that felt more familiar to me. then even though there's a big, huge part of me that wants to be seen and wants to love and is very eccentric and bold, that part of me was always overshadowed by the part of me that felt like I needed to be quiet or hidden, because if I was too loud, if I was too seen, then I was a target. So creating that invisibility protected me in some ways, but also left me feeling really lonely. I think early childhood, the way you express things isn't clear, isn't full, isn't a whole story, and you're angry about something that's happening to you and you express it in an angry way, and that gets you in trouble, that gets you put in timeout, that gets you put in more quiet, shut down situations, to the point where it's like, why am I even trying to tell anybody about what's happening? There's no point, there's no reason. So it definitely left me feeling like nobody believed what I had to say. And it is still something I struggle with today, feeling like nobody will either believe what I have to say or wants to even know what I have to say. I think the biggest thing that would really help me kind of survive those times is when I was on my own. When I was younger, I would pray a lot. Part of me would be like, why is this happening? Or why won't you stop this? As an adult, I understand more that, we all have that free will, and some people don't use that in the best way. The only thing I could do is really, the thing is within myself to really face it. I think I mentioned that I would kind of live in kind of a fantasy world. So I would like hyper fixate on projects with art. I remember as a young child, one of my favorite things to do was kind of tie a string to a magnet and walk around our family junkyard and then take the junk and then create art, statues, or whatever with it. And that's actually something I do today in my art studio. Is I find those pieces all around, and I create art and sculptures and jewelry with those pieces. It's a way for me to kind of reconnect with that inner child. And that was kind of a safe place, and a place I felt powerful and creative, because I could take nothing and turn it into something beautiful, or take something that was discarded and threw away, like I felt I was, and then give that new life, and then sell it now, honestly. And that's exciting to see. Like, I can give it a new home and somebody else sees it as worthy, exciting, and desirable. So that's one reason why art is such a big thing for me, is that through everything, no matter how poor I was, I was able to do art. Even when it was kind of winter, we would melt crowns on the floor vents and then create little sculptures from that. And that, gave us a creative outlet to do too. So I know art was a big part that helped me survive, and really sinking into my spirituality as well, connecting with God, source, and just being in nature. When I was in nature, I felt closest to God. I felt closest to harmony. When I was able to feel that, I knew I was justified in my anger and confusion about what was happening inside or with other people, because life isn't only that. In life, there was something else in life that was peaceful and loving, and just a place that you could just be without doing or achieving something for somebody else's desire. And I think those were kind of the main things that really helped me really get through that. I know as I got older and went to school for massage therapy, I learned a lot about somatic therapy, which is mind and body, where you kind of balance the two together. And all sorts of different therapies out there, like tapping therapy, cognitive behavioral therapies. Now I really do a lot of grounding, where I'll have my bare feet on the ground, and a deep a breath work. It's called 4-8 breath. I know there was a period of time about 2 years ago now where I was having panic attacks multiple times a day. I was on like 4 medications and still having these panic attacks, and nothing was helping. And the only thing that guided me through that was that 4-8 breath. It activates that parasympathetic nervous system that tells you to, you're safe, you can calm down. And they tell you a lot when you're a kid to take a deep breath, but they don't really tell you, what that does and how that affects your body. But to know that I have that tool with me wherever I go, I can stop and take that 4-8 breath, take a few in a row to really help you calm down. But it really helped me find that, again, that solace, that peace, and knowing that I don't have to only experience the pain and the heartache and the confusion of life. I can take it in my own hands, do the breath, and experience the bliss or the peace or the solace that's there. What do I want people to understand most about my story is that I think the biggest thing, because everything happened to me at such a young age, is that it's really, really important to listen to our children and to really get curious about what they're trying to express, because they can't express things fully. And sometimes they will express anger by being angry. Sometimes they will express confusion by being confused. And it's our job as parents, as guardians, that's the big thing, guardians of our children, is to be curious and to figure out what it is that they are trying to say and to help them say it in a way that's safe. I think that's my biggest take, is that it can happen anywhere, any age. And I think in general, we just need to try to be a little bit more curious about what people are saying, trying to understand it, because a big part of my life has always been trying to express what I feel inside. And that comes through art, that comes through poetry, that comes through dance. Doesn't always come out in perfect written language or spoken language, especially for me. Spoken is hard, or it's the hardest way for me to express myself, is through spoken word. And especially as young children, they need a variety of outlets to express themselves. Don't shut them down for their expressions, and you don't have to rush into any kind of conclusion, but be curious and see what they keep talking about. And if they keep talking about things that seem alarming, then it's really important to follow up on that as guardians. I think that's the biggest thing I want people to understand. It's just that expression is difficult in any form. And if you're experiencing something intense and painful and scary, that makes it even harder to express. So there needs to be grace and understanding and sympathy when it comes to hearing those voices in whatever way they come out, especially in young children. The thing I would like to say to someone who has also been abused is that that person tried to take away your power because they saw something powerful within you and they wanted it for themselves. But no matter what they could do on the outside, there's always been a voice in you that knows that you are powerful and that knows that you are strong and that you are what they wanted, because they didn't have it. But that means that you have it. So to claim that back within yourself and to find ways to express that power and that identity within you that they wanted, and express it in the way that is meaningful to you, not to let them take that from you. I think that's the biggest thing. There's all sorts of ways to work through healing, and as much as the internet can be good and bad, it does give us access to many different modalities for healing, whether that be through journaling or, like I mentioned earlier, tapping therapy or cognitive behavioral therapies, even massage therapy and art therapy. Choose things that call to you, that make you excited to try. Healing doesn't have to be scary or painful. It can be a way to express yourself that you've never been able to do before. So explore the different options there are out there, and you'll find what really naturally works for you. And just keep trying more, because the more tools we have in our tool belt, the better we're able to really handle situations moving forward as well. Even though I have had fear in my life and I have been afraid in my life, no matter what I've faced, I've always been able to face it. And I've always been able to work through it and move through it and grow and learn. And I think that's the biggest point. The biggest thing that we're supposed to do here on earth is to experience, and through that experience to grow. And I always tell my son that there's always a lesson to be learned through an experience. And if we're paying attention to the lesson, we won't have to repeat it over and over again. If I would have learned that a lot earlier on, I would have been a little more golden. But we don't have to experience anything over and over again, as long as we're taking the time to really listen to what it's trying to teach us. And even those big scary moments, even those painful moments in life can teach us something. Even those moments that we can't stop or change can help us grow through that, because of our power, not because of what's happening to us, but because of what we choose to do with it. Do we decide to let it take over us and control our lives for the rest of our lives? Or do we decide to say, that was wrong, I can't change what they did, but I can move forward and do something different in my life? Generational trauma is real, and something that our grandmother wasn't able to face, or our mother wasn't able to face, then gets put down for us to face. And I've done a lot of that with this healing work that I've done. And there is some disappointment and some pain knowing that they spent their whole life suffering, not being able to look at or face the pain that they experienced. And because of that, they weren't able to, they passed it down. And when that happens, there is a lot of pain, a lot of sadness that comes with that. But when there is somebody who's able to take that and look at it and face it and change the way that they experience the world, it really is a powerful thing to move through something that you think, how many generations of people did this man do this to, and did he convince that we're worthless? I think the biggest thing as a child looking at my mom was always wanting her to be happy and to do the things that she wants to do. There was some shame with that growing up, knowing that she was never able to do that for herself. And even today, she still hasn't chosen herself. And most likely because of those voices that her own father put into her head. So that's why it's more important for me to be able to do that, to show them, to show my family that it is possible to do and be and live as you want to be and as who you are, rather than just giving in to the idea that I'm worthless, or that because my body isn't perfect that no one will love me, or whatever other sadistic things that he had to say to us as children. I think that's the biggest thing that I feel like I come through with that. That, we all deserve to live the life that we choose for ourselves, despite what other people may have done to us. Even though it can be difficult to fight for our own voices, no one else will other than us in this moment. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me today on Cries of Redemption podcast, where every cry finds hope and healing. I truly pray that you've gotten something out of this episode for today, because again, I've said it several times before, it is not easy to share your testimony or your story or your background, but I'm so glad and thankful that Kit did. Kit is an amazing artist and a massage therapist. She's located in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and she's dedicated to healing through creativity, compassion, and care. You can explore her artwork on Instagram at revive_artistry studio. You can also book a massage session with her at massagebook.com. Just check out the description for the episode. All the links are there. Until next time, please take care of yourself. hold on a little longer because this is not the end of your story. And you, my sister, my brother, are deeply and unconditionally loved.